usually timed it to 18 to 20.
We're live.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our live stream at Active Galactic Videos. My name is Victoria. I'm filling in for Matthew today. He's on vacation. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Grant. I'm the writer, editor, general put-together footage person of the Apollo Surveyor video. And I'm a graduated student, so I'm no longer technically here, so I'm back again to talk about the video. It's going to be great.
Yeah, so we're going to be discussing the Surveyor video, like Grant said, today. The Road to Apollo, 87,000 images of the moon. And it's our most recent video, and it's one of a series of videos that we're doing about the Apollo anniversary, or Apollo 11 and the Apollo anniversary. So, yeah, Surveyor was the first one. We've got Grant here to chat about it, and I guess we'll just jump into it.
Dive right in.
So, one of the main parts of the video, I mean, a lot of the video was about Surveyor, obviously, but you mentioned a lot about the Space Imagery Center that we have here at the U of A, at the Lunar and Planetary Laboratory, and I was just wondering how you, first found out about them, how you got into contact, how that sparked the interest for the video and stuff, you know?
Well, I first found out about the Space Imagery Center actually from Matthew. He suggested we go over there and check them out a little bit, so Aaron's working on the Kuiper video for this series. We went to check it out. I think Nolan went in his own time at one point just to see what was there. And we really we didn't know exactly what we were going to find. We just knew that it was a resource. So we went in, we talked. By that point, I already had a basic idea that I wanted to do something about Surveyor. So I went in and just asked straight up, do you have any images from Surveyor? Do you have any of the documentation from that program?
Yeah.
And the answer was yes. Actually, we have copies of the after-mission reports. We have 87,000 images on our hard drive that we're in the process of restoring. And
That's crazy.
yeah, it was quite something. I really didn't expect to find as good a resource as I did. And I've been back there a bunch of times. This whole process started middle of last fall, first semester of my senior year, and it over the course of the next 3-4 months, I went back there a couple more times to gather information, put together an idea of what I wanted to talk about. And the one thing I would want to mention is that they don't just have Surveyor there. A lot of their stuff is Mars related. They've got a lot of Apollo related stuff in that room, and the room that you see in the video is not all that they've got. They have a whole basement area, I've heard, that that houses the rest of their collection, and they are one of, I think, I probably have the number wrong, but they're one of over a dozen, I think, NASA archives that have a similar mission spread around the world, and they just happen to be here.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a cool thing, I feel like, I didn't introduce myself too well, but I was a student at the U of A too, and I've been working for AGB for a couple years, and I feel like you always find weird things that the U of A has, from that to, I know we have, do they call it, the Mars Garden or something? They, test, they have, a little mini Mars outside,
Heard that.
Mars terrain. It's just the desert. They, run, test rovers there or something, like fake rovers. But yeah, it's such, a cool, interesting thing, that we have here. And, yeah, so that's a little bit about this, the Imagery Center. So, also, do you know if, just anyone's allowed to go in and use that footage and stuff?
Pretty much the way the Space Imagery Center was described to me, anyone can walk in. You can make a request, and if they don't have an image or I think they do have some archive video footage. I'm not 100% sure because I didn't use any that they had.
Okay.
I only used images that they had. But you walk in, if you have an interest in a particular topic, you can make a request. They can look up, see what they have.
Yeah.
And they'll do their best to get you what you need if you're doing research, or if you're doing, a video like what I was doing, or if you're just curious, because they're always the people I talk to, John especially, they're always happy to talk about this stuff. They're tech nerds, space nerds. They love this stuff.
Oh yeah, John seems super enthusiastic about you wanting to do the video. He was a nice guy. I remember I popped in there real quick to help you do one little extra piece, and he was so nice. But yeah, so that kind of leads into another question that I had. You mentioned that the Imagery Center actually doesn't have a lot of video archival footage.
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
It wasn't something that I needed, so I ended up not asking.
Mm-hmm. But you did use like some video in your. So where'd you find that stuff? Like all the.
A lot of the video and footage of Surveyor while it was being instructed, and the Apollo program, and that little snapshot I got of Kennedy, that was all NASA archive footage.
Oh, okay.
They have a couple of documentaries that I ruthlessly downloaded and chopped up into the bits that I wanted. And the beauty of it is, it's NASA archive, so it's, available for anyone to use.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I got a lot of the stuff I needed, especially, the launch footage, because I saw images in the after mission reports of the rockets. I saw images of them launching, but I didn't have a picture of them actually taking off. And it's kind of something from the 60s that is really kind of iconic, seeing these big rockets just lift up off the ground in a plume of smoke and fire.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I in my editing projects and stuff, it seems like NASA has like a lot of stuff that they make. I mean, NASA is like a government program, I guess, so they kind of have to make most of their stuff available to the public. That's kind of like their trade-off, I think, for getting funding. But like, it's really nice how accessible everything is. Like, not only with like places like the Space Imagery Center, but like, you can look online, and NASA has like 10 different YouTube channels for all their different bases and everything, and like different focuses, and like all their stuff is or most of their stuff, like if you're doing education like we do, like it's completely free for you to use and everything. It's super cool. Yeah, they're great. NASA's great.
NASA's cool.
I don't know if you knew that, but NASA's great. Also, I didn't say this in the beginning, but I've got some questions written up already to ask Grant about his video that the team thought of. But if you guys have any questions, if you're watching, please definitely comment them in the live chat. We've got some people behind the scenes that'll let us know if there are any questions. Yeah, glad you're here. Or I guess if you have questions after the fact, if you're watching this later, then comment them down below and we'll try to answer them. So let's see. So you mentioned a little bit of like we talked a little bit about how you edited this video and like choosing your footage and everything. And this was actually your first time editing a video for AGB, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So so you're typically like more of a writer for our group. I mean, you do a lot of everything, but like you definitely work more in like pre-production stuff sort of thing, I would say. So what was it like doing a bunch of post-production?
I think the main thing that I had to adjust to was AGV's style, because to tell the story that I wanted to tell, to essentially take on a documentarian style theme to the video, meant I had to kind of break a lot of the habits I'd formed doing editing in other stuff I've done before on my own YouTube channel once upon a time. So that there was a bit of a learning curve, and a lot of the learning curve later on, once I'd gotten everything in the order that I wanted, was making sure color balance was correct, so making sure audio sounded nice, which is something I came to you a lot for, because you know more about this than I do, and it helps being able to know how to use Premiere's tools to get that to work. So there was a learning curve when it came to this, and it took me quite a while, but if I was tasked with doing another project similar to this, it wouldn't take as long. I think I'd be able to hammer it out, not in half the time, but in a lot less time than it took me the first time around.
Definitely. Yeah, it's especially if you're working with something like Premiere. I mean, like if you're doing like a Final Cut or you know, I would say Avid, but nobody uses Avid to make YouTube videos. But, like, other, like, editing softwares like that aren't, like, Movie Maker and iMovie that are, like, really, like, consumer-based, like, for everybody. There's definitely a learning curve, but, like, once you get it, once you produce your, like, first or second video, like, you kind of get the hang of it and everything, and it ends up making it a lot easier. You know, you find the shortcuts and stuff. Yeah, it's a process though. But I thought the video came out really nice, and like, I especially, like, you mentioned style and like trying to match AGV's style, and I thought the way that you did it was really cool because you I think I made a video a while ago, like the high-res video or something, where I used like VO, the voiceover the way that you did, and like narration, but I don't know, yours was like really solid. I thought it was significantly better than mine.
Thank you.
Yeah, and yeah, it was just like it was. I think it's kind of what we get to do here as at the group is like kind of combine our style, like our own personal styles, with like the AGV style in order to like tell stories. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty much everything I've trained myself to do while I was here. So
yeah, I mean, I remember you writing it and you were like trying to figure out like what kind of story structure would work best for like a documentary-esque video and everything. It was a process, but it was cool.
Oh yeah, that was.
So let's see. So on a more fun note, so I pointed this out to you before we started the stream, but I just wanted to know your opinions on the fact that there's an Encyclopedia Britannica link under our video because YouTube thinks it's a conspiracy. It's not. They're facts.
If anything, I think that proves the point that this is something that people really haven't heard of that much.
Yeah.
I mean, people, you can go out to a random person on the street and ask them what the Apollo missions were, and they probably have some inkling of it.
Yeah.
I mean, if not for the Apollo 13 movie, which is pop culture, at the very least they would have some general idea in history that, hey, we made it to the moon first and landed people there first. No one really seems to have paid attention to the fact that there was a process getting us there. I mean, the whole point of Surveyor was, okay, can we actually land something on the moon safely without, blowing it up or crashing it into the moon or missing completely?
Yeah.
So that was... It makes a certain amount of sense. I don't know why YouTube decided that it had to be conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
That strikes me as a little strange, but it makes sense to me from a perspective of the fact that people might not know that this story actually is a story that can be told.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I even found, because so Surveyor, like I said before, is the first of 3 videos that we have leading up to the Apollo anniversary, in, like, late July, I think. Yeah. And we also have one about the crater field in northern Arizona where astronauts trained before they went to the moon. And then the other one about Kagber? Yes. And I forget what the missions were called. Oh my gosh.
I think it was the Ranger program?
Yes, the Ranger, yeah. So it's like all these things that, like, I've lived in Arizona for 5 years, and like a lot of the rest of our team has been like in Arizona a lot longer. And a lot of us didn't know that there was a crater field in Flagstaff, which is 4 hours away from us, where, like, astronauts trained, and, like, we didn't know that, like, Surveyor was a thing. Speaking of which, like, while you were doing all your research on Surveyor and stuff, like, what originally, like, caught your eye about it that made you go, like, hey, I want to make a video about this, and, like, what did you find the most interesting?
I think what this entire process started was Matthew got the team together, essentially said, Nolan, Aaron, Grant, the 3 of you are doing videos on stuff leading up to Apollo, go find something. Or at least I think it was kind of like that. He may have asked us to volunteer, maybe. It's been a while, so I'm a little fuzzy on the exact details, but that's essentially where the process started. And I kind of had an idea where Nolan was going. I kind of had an idea where Aaron was going. So that meant, okay, 2 topics that I can't touch, which means, okay, great. I can look at entirely new things, which means I just started looking up stuff about Apollo, the Apollo missions, and I started running through pretty much everything I could find. I did a deep dive. I went down the rabbit hole, and I got a little lost once or twice. But I think the moment that really caught my eye was I think, reading through the Apollo 12 Wikipedia article, because that's where I always start. And it's just like, oh, Apollo 12 picked up this piece of another spacecraft called Surveyor. What's Surveyor? Tell me about this. So I clicked on that, and that was the next step down the rabbit hole, and I just started learning all about the Surveyor landers, and that really sparked my interest, because if memory serves, they weren't the first objects to land on the moon. I think Soviet Russia managed to land 1 lander at one point. It's just, I think we landed more in the end.
Yeah.
Successfully. We did still lose 2 of them, but it's an important moment, because when I was reading through it, it was just like, oh wow, we had to we had to overcome a bunch of obstacles to get there. Not just the mathematics and physics required to get something from Earth to the moon, which is really complicated, and the technology required to then take an image and transmit it back to Earth. And there's some interesting stories involved with that John told me later on. But that's essentially how I got a hold of Surveyor, just because it was something that, the other 2 members of the team who were doing this 3-part project, they hadn't decided to touch it. So I grabbed it and made it my own and said, Surveyor's going to be my thing.
Nice. Very cool. Yeah, I'm excited to see, I mean, I've seen some of the cuts of the ones coming out, but I'm excited to see them all together, as a final product, sort of.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Let's see. What else do I have on this little list? Talked about that. So, going back to the Space Imagery Center a little bit, obviously there were a lot of cool things there. Were there any things that, that John may have showed you or told you about, that for some reason couldn't make it into the video? Maybe they weren't about Surveyor, or little things you had to cut out that you thought were interesting.
There were a few. I don't think we really went into the detail of how the images were actually recorded, because what they had, the way they recorded the images for Surveyor was they transmitted them back to Earth onto a television screen.
Okay.
Which had dots on it to allow them to. I forget what.
Oh, that's why the dots were on it.
That's why the dots are there, but that's also why, when you look at the images, there's a little bit of distortion around the edges, because the television screen is curved. So essentially what they did was they had a television screen, then had a camera facing the television screen, and they'd take pictures of the television screen to get these images.
They just took a bunch of screenshots.
Pretty much. The whole process that John has had to go through to get these images digitized is it's a little crazy what they've had to go through, because they've had to take the original tape, the film, the physical object that this stuff was imaged on. They had to redesign, refurbish an old computer, which turns out was in someone's garage somewhere.
That's crazy.
So that they could just read it again. And then they had to translate that to a modern day computer. And it's mind-boggling that they are able to do that, and they've been able to do it for almost 100,000 images. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. That's insane.
That's just one of the stories that John told me. I mean, he is someone who was learning about broadcasting at the time that this was happening. He was, he mentions he was a student in college. He was just getting around to graduating when these landings were happening, and he knows the tech. He's able to talk about it. He knows about the kind of camera technology that was used for this. So he was an invaluable resource, especially putting a perspective on how today's technology compares to back then. Because back then, he says it best in the video. It's crazy what they were able to do with the slide ruler.
Yeah. Yeah, you think back and it's like, people always say now, I think the thing is, like, the modern smartphone has more computing power than what they used to get to the moon. Mm-hmm. It's insane. It's crazy.
I think this goes from something I heard on NPR, but essentially they had to, from the beginning of the space race when Kennedy put out the challenge to the American people. Back then, you couldn't fit a computer in a room smaller than the one we use for our office.
Yeah.
This was probably the minimum size for a computer. And
our office isn't that small. It's kind of small, but it's like we've got like 5 desks in here.
Yeah, you can fit the whole team in here if you squeeze us. It's not that difficult, but that was the size of a computer back then. They weighed literally tons.
Yeah.
And then they had to essentially say, okay, we need a computer that's first more powerful and also much smaller, so that we can put it on a spacecraft to handle the flight to the moon and the landing and all of that stuff. So, computer technology itself just jumped from the beginning of that decade to the end of it. And the Surveyor craft are kind of an example of a in-between intermediary jump from the beginning to Apollo. One of the other fun facts that's kind of related to this is the only piece of a probe sent to another stellar body, sent to another astronomical body, in this case the moon. The only piece to ever return to Earth is Surveyor 3's camera. Because Apollo 12 was sent essentially in the area that Surveyor 3 landed.
And so they could pick it up.
So they could pick it up, so they could study the things Surveyor 3 spotted for them. And it is the only piece of equipment from a probe that has come back. You can go to the Smithsonian and see it.
That's wild. I didn't know that was a thing. That's super cool.
Yeah, and all it took was, I think essentially a screwdriver to pull it off, and they tucked it into the module and took off later with that and a bunch of rocks, essentially.
Nice. Yeah, you don't think about it, because, like, obviously astronauts have to have a vehicle to come back in, there's stuff, like, those sorts of missions will always return, but then we've got, like, the orbiters and the landers that just, like, we just leave them in space. And
it makes me wonder how things are going to be whenever we get people on Mars, because they're just going to
find a bunch of junk everywhere.
They're going to find a bunch of junk everywhere, but there's always going to be that person that says, oh, I want to go see that rover that we left here, decades ago.
Exactly.
Take it and put it in a museum somewhere on Mars and say, hey, here's our first tourist attraction.
Come see the rover.
Come see the rover. 6-month journey.
Yeah.
NASA had to be very clever about how they made Surveyor work. Camera's one thing, but they had whole sets of mirrors around the spacecraft so they could see the panoramas that I use in the video.
That's how they did it?
Yeah. They had cameras that rotated. There was actually a shot that I didn't quite get to put into the video. I think you can see the tail end of it where the mast at the top of the rover, lander just moves ever so slightly. And that's it. That is the mirror. I think they were doing a test on it to see that it would rotate however much they needed so they could take picture after picture after picture after picture.
Yeah.
And
that's pretty cool.
Yes, they were really, really clever. Might as well not make the camera move. Make other things that are smaller, less fragile move instead.
Yeah, it's really smart engineering. Very cool.
Yes, and with the help of digital aids like Photoshop, we're able to essentially take those big panoramas. In the video you see them putting together one panorama near the end.
With the little
with the little squares, and you know, that makes it very obvious that it's a bunch of pictures that are lined up, and there's obviously a little bit of distortion between them. But you know, there are a couple of wide shot images that I included earlier in the video that the team that John is working with, I think John put together one or two of them. There's another guy who actually worked, I think he actually worked on on Surveyor, Reynoldson, I think is his name. He ended up doing a couple of these collages as well, and they just took Photoshop and smoothed everything out, so that now you get that beautiful wide shot that is incredibly detailed. You can zoom in to your heart's content and lose very little quality, and
nice.
It's
really cool.
Yes, it is. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Still so impressive that, like, you know, they were on the moon, and it was 50 years ago, more, and like we have these like super clear pictures, or at least we have source material that can make super clear pictures. It's cool.
Yeah, and it is a catalog, essentially. What Surveyor has provided is a catalog of an undisturbed surface of the moon, because now we've visited.
Yeah, exactly.
We visited. It's no longer undisturbed. There is evidence that we were there. So it's a catalog that we can't really get again.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yep.
So I see that there's some stuff going on in the chat. I don't know exactly what's going on in the chat. Do we have questions? Or is it just people sharing fun emojis? Which is fine too.
Emojis.
Okay. Just
Emojis
making
are
sure.
perfect.
Okay.
Roger C said, weird orbital parallel park.
Weird orbital parallel park. I wouldn't want a parallel park, but that's kind of what you have to do if you're taking the Apollo craft and having them meet up again.
A really complicated parallel park, yeah.
Yeah, you know,
Gotta like
at a speed faster than a speeding bullet.
What do they
Essentially.
call it? Rendezvous?
Yeah, orbital rendezvous,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah,
Kind of.
it's space flight is. I don't even understand the basics. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You can't point in the direction you want to go and thrust. You have to point like up or to the side of it, or it's weird. It's weird. It's not basic stuff that's intuitive to understand. You need a computer to do it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, I don't know if I have any more questions for you, because I thought maybe it would take more time for these. But do you have any other fun stories from filming? Any like things like issues that you ran into that like changed the route of the video or anything like that? I guess like
one of the things that people wouldn't know watching the video now, we originally intended to make essentially a Surveyor prop from scratch. Essentially, I don't know what I was thinking at the time, but it was just like, sure, I'll try that. I make models every once in a while. I've got spare parts lying around, so I thought, you know, maybe I could try putting together a Surveyor model. Obviously, that never happened. The original idea was to give it to Nolan so he could take it to the crater field for his shoot, and have it dangle while they land it, quote unquote. The other option was they take the camera with a bit of compressed air behind it and and spray the compressed air into the ground and act like it's landing.
Oh, that would have been good.
It would have been fun. And then the other option was to, Matthew wanted an explosion somewhere in one of these 3 videos. He ended up getting it in stock footage, by the way, I think.
Oh yeah, that's to come.
Yes, that is to come. Well, controlled explosion in the rocket launch, I will say that.
Oh, true. Yes.
But it's the other option that we were thinking of was just get a little firecracker and have it go pop, and then zoom the
Surveyor lands,
and then zoom the camera out to see everybody just standing around this remarkably tiny little thing.
Yeah.
Because I kind of wanted to make things a little goofier than they are in the video, because I mean 2 of these things crashed, and if you think about it, that's about a 35% chance of things going wrong.
Yeah.
And then they decided, okay, it's time to send people up to the moon.
Gotta beat Russia.
Gotta beat Russia. There's a 35% chance these guys aren't going to make it, but let's do it.
Yeah.
No, that's probably not really what went through their heads. But if you look at the Surveyor pattern, I think I did the math at one point. It was it was a disturbingly high percentage failure for the Surveyor missions. So
Spaceflight's dangerous.
Yeah, 2 out of 7. It's not the best success rate, but it's I think better than Russia. If you look it up, they didn't even get off the ground a lot of times, which is kind of scary.
We have a question for Grant.
Ooh.
Alexander asks, how much storage space does the 87,000 pictures images take?
Yeah.
Oh.
So I don't know if they heard you, but one of our viewers asked how much storage space does the 87,000 images take up at the imagery center? Do you know? Did he say?
I don't think John ever told me.
It's gotta be wild.
I suspect it's probably in the terabytes easily.
Yeah.
It's gotta be. Because the images I got are all high definition. And there are a lot of images that I got on a little 8 gig flash drive that I have. Filled up the entire flash drive.
Wow.
Maybe 60 or so images in total. And they were all big files.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not including the giant panoramas that you see. I mean, the color image I put in, of the Surveyor lander foot, that's actually really zoomed in on one of those panoramas. And I have like 4 or 5 of them on that flash drive, and they take up easily half of it.
Jesus.
So
That's wild.
Just between these panoramas and the images that make them up, it's got to be terabytes easily.
It has to be, yeah.
Because they've got, you take 60 some odd images and multiply it by like 8 gigabytes, and no, I don't want to do the math. There's a reason I'm a creative writing major. I don't do the math very well, but
fair enough.
It's got to be a lot.
Oh yeah, and I mean, so you said you got HD images. What did John ever mention, like, what the original, like, quality of the images were? Because, like, today we deal in, like, the 1080 by 1920 is kind of the standard for, like, video on YouTube and stuff, but, like, there's 4K and everything. Did he ever say? He
never. If he did, I don't specifically remember it.
Okay.
Me just teasing out an answer is that they'd be limited by whatever the resolution of the TV screen was that they were photographing.
That's true, yeah.
The real limit would be that the actual photographic film, you actually can get a lot of detail, just because the smallest bit of information you can get from it is a single crystal of whatever element they're using to record it. I think it's some sort of silver compound.
Yeah. Silver nitrate?
Silver nitrate, something like that.
I think I learned that in film history.
Yeah, so that's... but the point is that that's much finer than, say, the pixel on a 1960s television.
For sure.
Would be. So I think that is the minimum level of detail. But the one thing that I do remember John saying was that the images were able to resolve down to, I think, like 2 centimeters on the surface. So it's decent resolution for what they were trying to get, which is distant images of the surface of the moon. And of course, as you get closer, that resolution gets a little bit better, especially if you're looking at, say, the footpad, which is 6 feet away from the mirror. So it's not that far.
Cool.
Yeah. So there's a lot of valuable information in these images. I chose literally what was the best for this, but there's a lot of data I think people can still get out of them, and that's why they're in the archive.
Yeah. Well, I think that's about it, unless there are any other questions that were asked.
One comment that just says, based on those numbers, a rough calculation said it's almost 11 terabytes.
Oh my god.
Okay.
Yeah, so...
it's more than I can store on my computer.
Yeah, someone calculated, apparently that would be about 11 terabytes of data, which is huge, and probably... It's bigger than all of the stuff that we've made at AGB in the past 4 years. I think we have it all on OneDrive, and it's like 13 or something. So, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot of stuff.
And that's just Surveyor. They've got stuff from Apollo, too, and Apollo took a lot of pictures.
Oh, yeah.
And they took video, so they've got... There's a huge amount of information.
Yeah. Sweet. Well, thank you so much for coming in.
Yep.
I guess that's about it. Thank you guys for tuning in and blowing up that comment section. Hope you enjoyed our little chat. Thank you so much for coming back.
Yeah, of course.
Good luck in your future endeavors. 'Cause I don't know if you have any other stuff like that you're gonna come back for a Q&A for.
Maybe for the stuff we've done at Mount Wilson.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll see you again. We'll pull you back. You'll never get free of HG.
I will always return. Just bring out the big hook from off stage, and I'll be fine.
Grant's back. Yeah. So thank you guys so much. If you have any other questions, if you're tuning in like after the fact and have some questions, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. And like someone from our team, me, Grant, somebody else, we'll try to answer them. And yeah, look out for our next Apollo videos. The next one comes out either next Tuesday or Thursday, probably Tuesday. And that one will be about the crater field, I think.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure that's the order that we're doing it. And that's going to be super cool. So, yeah. Thank you so much again, and have a great day. Gotta love our off-camera team, you know?